What's up guys, my name is Ace, and we're back with some XDefiant. I know, it's been a while. I haven't made any content on this, I haven't streamed this, I haven't been able to play this game in about a month and a half or so, and that's simply due to the fact that life has been really busy for me. We're in the process of buying a house, selling our current house, still got the newborn baby we're dealing with, and then we had the Black Ops 6 beta, where Call of Duty is always going to be my priority on this channel. So XDefiant had to take a bit of a back seat, but recently I revisited this on stream just to see what was going on with XDefiant, how it's playing these days, and I was pretty pleasantly surprised at how things played. I picked it up and things were just flowing great, felt great, and I was honestly not really expecting that based on a lot of what I've been seeing online, a lot of the discussions about XDefiant and how it's basically on its dying breath. So in today's video, I just wanted to do sort of a catch-up on what's going on with XDefiant right now, what happened to XDefiant, because apparently things aren't going amazing there when it comes to player counts, for instance. And then toward the end, I wanted to share some feedback on how I feel they could turn at least some of this around. So let's dive into this, and I think the most important thing to cover first here is the big article from Insider Gaming and Tom Henderson. This is generally quite a trusted source in the community, so typically if I see something from Tom Henderson, I do tend to trust it. And their article is literally titled, XDefiant is on borrowed time as player numbers decline rapidly. So that doesn't sound great at all for XDefiant. And they go on to say in the article that at one point they exceeded over 8 million players in the first week of XDefiant. However, now apparently they're struggling to hit the 20,000 player count mark. And the big takeaway here is apparently Ubisoft wants player numbers to increase by Season 3, or XDefiant risks losing its much needed post-launch support. Meaning there's a chance it could get shut down if they don't turn things around. And that's pretty scary to see if you're somebody that's into XDefiant, you want the game to succeed. I personally really want the game to succeed, even though it will never really be my primary game. Call of Duty is always going to take that spot for me, at least in the foreseeable future. But I really do like XDefiant as that second game when I do have that time available. And when I'm maybe getting a little bit sick of COD, it's great to have that second game to come to, and I really enjoy playing this game. So I personally would love to see them turn this around. So let's have a look at why this is declining, or the biggest reasons for this decline, at least based on what I've seen in the community. And I have seen quite a bit going on over the months when it comes to XDefiant. And as far as the biggest reasons go that I see the most people that are leaving the game and sick of the game, most of them will state the reason they're leaving, or at least one of the big ones, is the netcode. Especially within the launch window, this game had some of the worst FPS netcode I think I've ever experienced. Like getting shot and killed 20, 30 feet behind cover, like way after you got behind cover, you're getting killed, so cover just didn't seem to mean anything. Shots just going directly through players. Other times getting a bunch of hit markers, but not actually dealing any damage with those hit markers. And then top that off with the crazy movement and air strafing abilities that you had in the game right when the game launched as well. That just exacerbated everything when it came to netcode. And therefore, understandably, this is the type of thing that pushed a lot of early players away that otherwise, outside of netcode, enjoyed the game. Now, when it comes to my experience with the netcode, it has improved over time since launch. It's significantly better now than it was at launch, at least for me. I know people's experience with netcode will often differ just based on their region or their network setup. But for me, the netcode definitely has gotten a lot better over time, but it's still not perfect. It's still not amazing. It's just a lot more tolerable, and I'm running into fewer situations where I get shot and killed after I make it to cover. Now, I do know netcode is their #1 priority, and it has been for a long time. They know that the netcode is rough, and they know that this is a big reason that many people are leaving. And even to this day, Mark Rubin is stating that they are working hard on improving it. It really sucks that there isn't just a button they can press that suddenly fixes netcode and makes everything perfect, but that's not how things work, and this is taking a lot of time to get on top of, which already was too slow of a process for a lot of people. Now, I do think they could have done a little better here when it comes to the perception of netcode, at least, especially early on in the game's life cycle. And the first thing that I think they should have done earlier is nerf the air strafing and the crazy movement abilities in the game. Now, a couple weeks back, they did finally do this. They nerfed air strafing a little bit, as well as some of the animation transition timings, and I think that was a really good thing. And it's not because I don't like a movement skill gap. There's absolutely a skill gap involved with mastering that movement. The problem is this movement significantly exacerbated the networking issues, or the perceived netcode issues in the game. And if they would have toned that back sooner, I think things would have felt better netcode-wise, and perhaps fewer people would have left the game early on. Another thing that I see as a mistake when it comes to handling netcode is the fact that they have client-side hit markers in this game. This means when you shoot somebody, your system determines whether or not that was a hit or a miss, and if your system determines that was a hit, then you get a hit marker displayed on your screen. Even if by the time that information arrives to the host, according to that host, you may already be dead, or maybe some of those packets just get lost entirely, and therefore the damage doesn't actually get dealt to that enemy player because that hit was either rejected or lost. But on your end, you got the hit marker, so you should have dealt the damage, right? Well, that's not how it works in XDefiant. In Call of Duty, they have a client-side server authoritative system where you don't get that hit marker on your screen until the host has confirmed that that hit took place and that damage has been dealt to the other player. And in my eyes, that is a much less frustrating system. I would rather have a bullet go through somebody, not get a hit marker, and be like, hey, I think I should have hit that guy, than getting a hit and being like, I did hit that guy, but I didn't actually deal any damage to them, and that hit didn't actually mean anything. Now, I have no idea with what they're working with, if it's really easy to just turn that off or like switch it over so it only displays a hit marker after the host accepts that hit. I know there's also more delays that can make the hit detection feel slower if you end up doing that. So I know it's easier said than done, but one thing that I definitely think made the perception of the netcode worse was the fact that you could get a hit marker without dealing any damage with that hit. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on the netcode situation. If you guys haven't played XDefiant since like the launch window of the game and you've left because of the netcode, I definitely recommend trying it out again and just seeing how it feels. I know for me, it does feel a lot better, even though it's still not quite perfect. Next up, when it comes to reasons for the decline of XDefiant, at least as I've seen it, this is the progression system that's currently in the game. As of right now, you have your player level, which doesn't really appear to interact with anything. It's just a number that ticks up next to your name as you earn XP over time, and it's essentially just an indicator of your time played. And then we have our weapon levels with all the mastery camos that you can earn by just continuing to level guns up more and more, and they just keep adding more weapon levels with more camos on top of that. And then, of course, we do have our character challenges, so you can work through the various abilities in the game in order to unlock more characters. And that's pretty much it. I guess there's also the really basic challenges to unlock the weapons in the game, but I feel like most people that take XDefiant even somewhat seriously, they finished all of those challenges within the first week of the game being out. But for many people, this level of progression just got old really fast. It doesn't really offer a whole lot to chase on a game-to-game basis. At least for me, I find that to be fairly boring after a certain point, because you're not really working toward a specific challenge. You're not trying to get headshots or something like that, like you would in Call of Duty with camo challenges. Instead, it's just use this gun for a really long time and you will get the camo. And it's a similar story when it comes to that player level. It's just collect XP over time and that number goes up. And for some people, that's totally fine. That's all they need in a progression system and they're really happy with that. But for many, especially from the Call of Duty franchise, which I know much of the audience for XDefiant are from the Call of Duty franchise, that's not really enough. It doesn't give them enough to chase on a game-to-game basis. And I would really love to see more specific challenges come into play. And I think that's the type of thing that could get people hooked into the game again. Like if I had to grind for headshots or kills on the objective with a weapon, or like sliding kills, jumping kills, whatever types of kills that are hopefully designed to be engaging and good for the gameplay experience, not really bad ones, like excessive long shots, for instance. I think stuff like that could really go a long way into getting people hooked back into the game and giving them something to actively work toward on a game-to-game basis, aside from just playing the game, using a gun, and collecting XP while trying to win. Now, I know a couple things they have mentioned in the past that they plan on adding to the game. I don't know when, but they do plan on adding them. The first one is a prestige-like system, similar to Call of Duty's prestige system. And another thing is separate calling card challenges that could be individual challenges that you work toward, and then you get that little badge of honor to display. That's another thing they mentioned they wanted to add to this game, and I really think they need to get these things in the game sooner rather than later to try to add a little more depth and flavor to the progression system, and to give people specific goals to work for on a game-to-game basis. So that's the second big reason. Another big reason that I think many people left the game is, quite simply, the mechanical skill gap was too high for a game that has no SBMM in place. So this goes back to some of those movement mechanics like air strafing, for instance, especially early on in the game's life cycle. When you combine crazy movement abilities like that with a slower time to kill, that makes it very unwelcoming for lower skilled players when there's no SBMM present. Because for a lower skill player, if they're playing against somebody that's mastered those movement techniques, they just don't stand a chance at all. And don't get me wrong, I like a healthy skill gap. I think a healthy skill gap's important, but I think one of the reasons that for older CODs it worked really well to have little to no SBMM present That was due to the fact that there were tons of elements in the game that compressed the skill gap to a degree and helped lower skilled players find at least some success in the game. So things like death streaks, or like the last stand perk for instance, or the generally faster time to kill that we experienced in those older Call of Duty games as well. That made it so there was still a skill gap and better players would still rise to the top, but those lower skill players were able to at least get something out of the experience. They were able to have some fun, get the odd kill here or there, even if that kill was a little bit cheesy. And the hope there is it gives them enough enjoyment that it hooks them, so then they will slowly improve over time and become the better players. Whereas with XDefiant, I think for many people, they just got slapped around so hard by all the movement techniques that the really good players were using, to the point where they just throw up their hands like, I literally can't shoot this guy. I can't even see what this guy is doing right now before I'm dead. And based on what I was seeing, that was pushing many players away from the game early on as well, is they just quite simply couldn't find any enjoyment because they couldn't even comprehend getting a kill on players like that. Now the video is already getting pretty long and I've got a lot to cover here, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit and I'm just going to talk about one more big issue as I see it that I feel was leading to a lot of players leaving the game, and this is a slow drip feed of content. With XDefiant, they decided to go the route of adding one map every month, which on one hand, it's nice to see consistency with content updates, but at the same time, it just doesn't quite hit the same as like a new season launching with several new maps, a new faction, new guns that you can use right away, which that's another thing. The way they handled their battle pass this time around, they spread those guns out so much that there wasn't really that same level of excitement when the season dropped, because it didn't really feel like they just added 3 new guns to the game. Because for many players, it's going to take you weeks of grinding before you even get access to all 3 of those guns. In fact, I fell off with XDefiant before I even got to the sniper rifle in the battle pass. So I only ever got to experience 1 new gun with Season 1. So I think compressing things a lot more, not only with maps, but also with the gun content, and making it so that new seasonal update is actually a big, hyped moment that's really exciting and will bring you back, and you definitely want to come check it out because there's a bunch of new stuff to play around with. That's far more exciting than a really slow drip of content where you just get little bits and pieces here or there over time. And there we go. That wraps it up for at least a handful of some of the bigger issues that I feel have led to the decline of the player base of XDefiant. These are some of the bigger reasons that people have fallen off the game. And I'm talking people that otherwise enjoy the core gameplay loop. I mean, for some people, they just didn't enjoy the gameplay, and that's totally fine. And now I just want to share one final section here on what I think they need to do to get things back on track and bring players back into the game that have fallen off. And kind of similar to what I was just saying with that previous issue, I really think instead of a bunch of small updates and improvements over time with this game, if they really want to bring players back that have fallen off and stopped playing entirely, they need to put together a big update, like a really big, hyped update that's got a lot of the things that we've been anticipating for a long time. Because lots of small updates, they won't really be all that hyped. It won't be enough to sort of break that inertia and get people to re-download the game or just hop on the game again. And so I honestly think if they need that Hail Mary, if it really is true that they need to turn things around and bring players back to the game, otherwise they're in big trouble here. And if it really is possible that they could be shut down after Season 3 if they don't bring the players back, I think they should be combining a bunch of the things that they're planning on fixing over time slowly into one major update that not only has a lot of content, but also has a lot of the features that they've been planning and talking about for a long time. Even if it means pushing some of these things back, and instead of slow dripping them out, you delay them a little bit so that they can all be included in a major update. And I know that might sound counterintuitive and kind of frustrating for the active player base for the game, but if you're in that do or die situation where you need people to come back, you need a big update to bring them back. So what would this ideal update look like that I think would actually bring a lot of players back? Well, I would say this would probably have to be not until like Season 3. I know Season 2 is coming up, and it's probably far too late to throw a huge update together for that. But the first thing is, I think they should be adding several maps at once with the launch of the season, like 3 or 4 maps, even if it means stealing maps from future planned seasons. I mean, if there's not going to be those future seasons, if they don't turn things around, they may as well be using that content, which they've said that they've already got all the content laid out for the first year of the game. Like all the maps and stuff were apparently finished, or at least almost finished for the first year of content. Start compressing that, start stealing those maps from future seasons just to keep things going, and make those seasonal updates big with content. Then, of course, with this big update, it would be a seasonal update, so you have a new faction, new guns added to the game. I really think those guns should be accessed earlier on. I know there's the whole balancing act where you want people to grind through the full battle pass and you want to squeeze out as much retention as possible, but the way they handled it in Season 1, I feel was balanced in such a way that it was just causing burnout more than hooking people for that retention. Next, with this big update, I think we need some better progression systems in place. That prestige system they've been talking about, the calling card system, add those things to the game all at once, so there's suddenly like a brand new grind that you can start. So for those people that do come back, they've got something to start fresh with and build off of over time to keep them hooked. Then on top of that, for a big update like this, I would of course expect a lot of fixes and adjustments to the gameplay that are necessary. Maybe also that long-awaited kill cam update. That would be big news if there were a kill cam added with this. And another big thing that they have promised in the past, but we're still waiting for, persistent lobbies. I think that would go a long way to actually building a sense of community with the game and adding a bit more heart and soul to the game, because games with forced disbanding lobbies feel very soulless, and the community aspect just isn't there because there's no room for those rematches or rivalries over time if the game is just going to rematch make you after every match anyway. If we had a big seasonal update like this and they were to hype this up over time and talk about what's coming and really hype it up as like almost like XDefiant 2.0, like this is the big one, I definitely think that's their best shot at bringing a bunch of players back into the fold. And I know, again, this is another one of those cases where it's much easier said than done. I realize they're quite a small team working on this, and getting everything together for a big update like that, that is a big undertaking. I totally understand that. But I think just looking at the situation, assuming those leaks are correct, that XDefiant is on borrowed time, I really see that as the only big way for them to bring a bunch of players back into the game, because they have a big pool of players to draw from that did play the game and did experience, and maybe even liked the game to a degree, but they just fell off, and they need to be able to re-access those players and get them back into things. Now, I think, unfortunately, a big threat right now for XDefiant is even if they were to do that, they'll be competing directly against Black Ops 6 at that point. And I do fear that no matter what they do, that may be too big of an obstacle to overcome. Now, of course, time will tell on this. I do know that we are expecting some nice updates and improvements coming. There's a Phantom nerf coming, for instance. Also, finally, we'll be able to earn weapon XP through objective play soon. And the heavily anticipated bomb game mode is confirmed to be coming for Season 2 as well. So even if there isn't a big update, there are little things to be looking forward to for those of us that are still enjoying XDefiant. And I guess we'll just have to wait to see how things go in the future for them. I am curious to see how this all plays out. And with that, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you guys feeling about XDefiant in its current state? Are you still actively playing the game, or have you fallen off the game? And if so, what specifically caused you to fall off the game? Was it one of the things that I mentioned in today's video, or was it something else entirely? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.